Hi, today me going to explain a horror movie called A Come and See. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in 1943 in some rural village of Belarusia, where an elderly man is shouting angrily. He is trying to warn the local kids to stay inside instead of roaming around in the open fields. But a teenager named Floria, along the with his friend, ignores the old man's warnings and continues to dig in a sandy field. Recently, this area was a part of the battlefield between the Soviet forces and the Nazis, in which the latter won. These young boys now plan to join the local militia called the Soviet Partisans, and there is only a way to do so: find a weapon for yourself. However, if the occupying Germans see what they are doing, there can be grave consequences. That is why the two young boys hide themselves every time they hear a noise. They keep digging for a long time, and after a stroke of luck, Floria discovers a SVT-40 rifle in a sand mine trench. This sends the kids into a state of ecstasy and they start celebrating. But then a German reconnaissance aircraft suddenly flies overhead and notices their activity. The next morning at home, Floria's mother learns that he wants to join the resistance army. She is well aware that their family is as good as dead if the invading Germans find out about this. Hence, mom hands Floria an axe and begs him to kill her as well as his two younger sisters. But the teenager remains quiet and even tries to cheer up his sisters by making silly faces. Not long after, two members of the partisans arrive at the hut wearing German uniforms. They are here to conscript the teenager, and Floria is over the moon. He excitedly grabs the gun and his luggage and stands at attention like a soldier. His mother's attitude also changes, and she is rather welcoming to the men. However, she can't help but tear up at the thought that her only son is leaving for war. We also get to know that the partisan members dress as German soldiers to fool the onlookers. They don't want the families of their new recruits to be persecuted by Nazis. This is why they act as they are arresting the young boy, so everybody thinks he is being taken by the Nazis. In fact, they even throw the boy to the floor, causing him to get a cut on the forehead. Mom also understands the situation and plays her part in the act. Floria is then shoved into a wagon, and the party departs from the village. The young boy takes only a last look at his dear mother and his two younger sisters before leaving. Soon, Floria arrives at the Soviet resistance camp, where a couple hundred soldiers are stationed. He is thrilled to become a low-rank militia and performs whatever menial task that Isa asked of him. Floria looks around to see many recruits enjoying being part of the cause, even riding on top of tanks. He soon gets invited to join a photo opportunity to showcase their unity against the German invasion. Later at dusk, the partisan commander, Kozak, asks the new recruit to introduce himself. He also orders the boy to shoot anyone who does not stop and recite the password before entering their camp. Unfortunately, Floria fails at this task when a young girl named Glasha follows the commander. He tries to ask her the password to enter in, but she brushes him aside like an afterthought. A few hours later, the new recruit is replaced by seasoned guards on patrolling duty. The next day, Floria is hard at work, washing a steel basin which is used to boil water. He feels jealous of the other young men fawning over the girl he saw the other night. Afterward, the commanding officer, Kozak, calls the whole platoon of partisans for a meeting. He informs them about the dangers of fighting against Hitler and orders them to defend every inch of their territory. After briefing the men, the stoic commander asks if anyone can march. One member steps forward and states that he can't do so due to the condition of his boots. Rather surprisingly, Kozak orders him to swap boots with Floria, and the latter reluctantly obliged. The young boy wants to be part of the action, but swapping boots with the soldier means he'll be left at camp. Not long after, the resistance army marches away, leaving Floria to look after the camp. As he wanders around the camp, he hears someone crying in the distance and checks it out. It turns out to be Glasha, the beautiful young lady from earlier. Unable to hold back his emotions, Floria sits in front of her and also begins to cry. After pouring out their frustrations, they start laughing and get to know each other. Glasha claims that Floria was left behind because he looks quite weak to fight. They then chat about other topics when suddenly Glasha kisses him. Floria was certainly not expecting this, so he pushes her away in shock. A few moments later, the two see a group of German paratroopers descending from the skies. It is followed by dive bombers who rain fire on the whole resistance camp. The shelling obliterates everything in its path and creates the kind of chaos that the teenagers had never seen. Floria is deafened after the bombing and tries to look for his new friend. But he instead sees a German soldier stuck in the trees, which freezes him on the spot. It is only when Glasha grabs him that he comes back to his senses, and the two run deep into the forest. However, just after a few minutes, The German paratroopers start firing in their general direction. This prompts the duo to hide in a trench and they observe their enemies from a distance. They have pretty much nowhere to go. So Floria gathers wood and vegetation to create a makeshift shelter. Once he's done, he signals for Glasha to get in, and the two end up sleeping close to each other for body warmth. A few hours later, they head towards Floria's village in hopes of eating a warm meal and reuniting with his family. But things look completely different with they arrive as the village is eerily quiet, with not a single soul in sight. Floria says smoke coming from his house's chimney and figures that his family might have left Nota too long ago. He then grabs a warm soup from the fireplace and offers it to Glasha. However, she notices an unusual number of flies on the table and several dolls lying nearby. This makes Floria realize that his family might be hiding nearby, somewhere the Germans would never go. Following this, the young boy storms out and runs toward the back of his house which is near a dense forest. Glasha joins him, but when she looks back, she sees a pile of lifeless, half-naked bodies. Although this horrifies her, she doesn't inform her friend about it, knowing well that it would destroy him. On the other hand, the ignorant Floria tries to cross a bog to reach the forest on the other side. Glasha joins him but the almost drown in the muddy water while doing so. She tries to reason with Floria, but he refuses to listen. This leaves Glasha with no option and she eventually breaks the news about the body she saw behind the house. Shocked and upset at the revelation, Floria chokes her and pushes her back into the bog. But he quickly realizes his mistake and jumps in to save her. Moments later, a partisan fighter named Drubasa approaches and rescues Glasha from the bog. She furiously calls Floria out for attempting to kill her, believing he is going crazy. But the soldier breaks up their scuffle and takes them to a large group of villagers who have fled the Germans. There, Floria sees the old village elder who had previously warned him and his friend about the German invasion. The elder reveals that he witnessed his family's execution and should have never dug up the rifles. Upon hearing this, it finally dawns on Floria that his family was killed due to his foolishness. He feels extremely guilty and attempts to unalive himself by burying his head in the mud. But Glasha and the villagers save him and later feed him as he comes to terms with reality. Rubas then shaves off bits of Floria's hair, which are buried in the ground as a symbol of his survival. Meanwhile, the other refugees start making a scarecrow-like figure of Hitler and spit out at. Rubas then leads a group of able-bodied men at the camp, including Floria, for a supply run. They soon find food at a nearby warehouse, only to notice that it is guarded by German troops. The enemy opens fire, forcing the Soviets to flee into the thick forest and hide there for the night. The next day, they place the scarecrow Hitler in the middle of a crossroads to mock the invading Germans. Meanwhile, the runaway group wanders around and comes to halt near a minefield. There are Russian flyers scattered on the ground, indicating that friendly troops had recently been in the area. A few hours later, the sun begins to set, so the group decides to make a run for it across a dirt road laced with landmines. However, two of the men carelessly step on a mine, resulting in their deaths. These forces Rubas and Floria to continue alone and they soon sneak up to an occupied village. Later that night, the duo steals a cow from a farmer and gets away under cover of darkness. They become so excited by their steal that they begin milking the cow right away. But their happiness doesn't last long as the Germans begin firing at them from all directions. Floria quickly takes cover on the ground, but poor Rubasa isn't so lucky and he's immediately shot dead. The desperate boy crawls forward to grab the cow, but it is also obliterated by enemy gunfire. Floria breaks down in tears at the sight and eventually falls asleep on top of the dead cow. The next morning, he wakes up to see thick fog surrounding the area. Floria tries to cut some flesh from the cow, but his knife is too small for it. He's thus forced to simply leave it and continue on his journey. Shortly after, Floria stumbles upon a horse cart and attempts to steal it, but the owner stops him. The two then get into a heated argument but are interrupted by an incoming German truck. Thankfully, the old man changes his attitude and hides Florian under a hay. He then asks the boy to pretend to be his grandson and takes him home. Upon reaching, he introduces Floria to the rest of his pretend family. But the introductions are cut short when a few German soldiers barge in and help themselves to seats at the table. Some of the family members nervously serve them food, while the rest stay silent, paralyzed by fear. The soldiers then order everyone to step outside, claiming it's just a routine inspection to check compliance. Floria knows they're lying and tries to warn the others that they're about to be killed, but no one listens. While the men are asked to march in groups, the women and children frantically line up to show their papers, believing they will flee safely to Germany. As a symbol of the successful takeover, an injured farmer is then made to hold up a sign proclaiming Hitler as the liberator of the village. Later, everyone, including Floria, is detained inside a wooden church and panic spreads as they attempt to escape. An official then announces that anyone who wants to leave can climb through the window, but they must leave their kids behind. Most of them obviously refuse and even proclaim that they'd rather die than leave their children alone. Floria, who is alone, somehow manages to escape through the window, but he's soon caught by an officer. He is then thrown to the ground and made to watch the tragedy that's about to unfold. Shortly afterwards, a young woman tries to escape with her toddler. But the soldiers chuck the baby back inside and then drag the woman by her hair. She desperately screams for her child, but the Nazis just make fun of her. They then turn their attention to a Jew, whom they brutally torture and kill. As if that's not all, they throw grenades and Molotovs at the church, setting it on fire. The people inside scream as they burn, and Floria watches everything go down in horror. But the Nazis are still not satisfied, and they use flamethrowers and machine guns to ensure not a single soul lives. In the aftermath of this violent rampage, a German officer points a gun at Floria's head, but they don't kill him. They instead pose for a photograph as a prop in their cruel joke. The Nazis then force the earlier woman into their truck and brutally assault her. As one last act of cruelty, they carry a sickly old woman lying in her bed and leave her outside to die. Sometime later, Floria wanders out of the scorched village in the direction of the Germans. He soon discovers that they have been ambushed by the Soviet partisan group. The boy then grabs some bandages from a German official's bag and eventually recovers his jacket and rifle from the hayfield. Later, he makes it back to the village and discovers that his fellow partisans, led by Kosik, have captured 11 Germans. It includes Thea, a cruel commander who massacred Thea village, and his collaborators. While some of the arrested men plead for their lives and deflect blame, a young fanatic Nazi is unapologetic. He defiantly vows that they will carry out their genocidal mission, no matter the cost. After a while, Kosik orders one of the collaborators to douse the German with a can of gasoline. The guy immediately obliges and begins pouring gasoline over his own comrades. But before they can even burn, they are shot dead by the partisans. The crowd finally cheers at the victory, but poor Floria is still traumatized by what he just witnessed. As everyone leaves, he notices a framed portrait of Adolf Hitler lying in a nearby puddle. He becomes so incensed that he proceeds to shoot it numerous times. Floria then imagines Adolf Hitler's life flashing before his eyes in a reverse, showing Hitler as a failed artist, a soldier, a rising political figure, and finally a baby. Afterward, Floria stops shooting and sobs, wondering if everything he has done is all in vain. He then rushes to rejoin his comrades and they march together through the birchwoods as snow blankets the ground. The story ends with a somber reflection on all the atrocities committed during World War II. During the Great Patriotic War, the Nazis burned 628 Belarusian villages to the ground. On March 22, 1943, in what is now known as the Katyn Massacre, entire villages were destroyed, and innocent civilians were murdered in cold blood.
Hearts dancing in the dark, your eyes a lighthouse spark, moon's a silver arc, guiding us through the park. Hand in hand we stroll, feeling young and whole. Stars like diamonds glow in this love untold. Moonlit whispers in the night, hold me close and hold me tight. Every breath a sweet delight underneath the pale moonlight. Soft words like velvet touch, silence never meant so much. All these dreams we clutch, in this moment there's no rush. Every step we take, every smile we make, in your arms there's no mistake. It's a love we won't forsake. Moonlit whispers in the night. underneath.